can dairy be considered very insulinogenic? How does the insulin response from it compared to other animal foods? Yes, like whey can be very even more than sugar, but it doesn't. It's like a spike and then it sort of comes down. Um, but just because it's doing that, it doesn't mean you're necessarily engaging the Randall cycle. So we're not talking about excess energy. We're talking about excess signaling. It's two different things. So I think sometimes we confuse. Insulin plays a lot of roles in terms of signaling in the body for muscle protein synthesis, or general protein synthesis. I should use that term, not muscle. There is muscle skeletal. Let's not forget bones are mineralized collagen, which is also requires protein synthesis. So all protein synthesis requires some signaling, and that's directed via leucine. And I've done a video on that. And leucine is and so the level of magnification of signal can vary and depends, but it's not really I think it's overdone. It's when it's chronically elevated, like engaging the Randall cycle, excess energy from carbs and sugar, the standard diet. That's when it's a problem. For signaling of protein synthesis and stuff like that, less of an issue. You can have a couple of glasses, like a liter of milk, and still be below the 50 grams. And pretty much, if you don't have excess protein at the same time and just drink the milk, you can still be in ketosis. So if you have like a glass of milk in the morning, then 2 hours later have another glass of milk, then 2 hours later have another glass of milk, and 2 hours later have another glass of milk, you'll still be way below the 50 grams, and you can still be in ketosis. I've done the experiment myself, and anybody can do it. So we're talking about in order to knock you out of ketosis, you have to have like excess in terms of substrates coming in. And it's usually when people either consume a combination of sugar and fat and they engage the Randall cycle, or they do the other thing, which is they keep your hands down, Harry. And they do the other thing is where they have excess, intake of protein, which is a good thing. Actually, we don't want to be in constant ketosis or breakdown. We still need some level of anabolism, and we still need to drive some of that deuterium into anabolism, or out of the cytosol, out of the cell, for other and not affect cellular functions, and drive it into those cells that are involved in collagen and stuff like that. So that's where we need to we drive it, and that's where we need to also build those protein structures. So even reverse Krebs cycle that I talk about has some role in certain circumstances, and standard, some of the Krebs cycle functions also have a role in the synthesis of certain proteins and stuff like that involved. So more heavily involved in collagen type, and muscle fibers. But, that's me going into other things. But pretty much I don't really get too concerned. If you're having a glass of milk with some beef, I don't have a problem with that. If you're basically having a glass of milk with a whole lot of sugar and, a combination of a fast food meal, that's going to magnify the insulin to glucagon ratio massively. And so glucagon will be suppressed, insulin will be through the roof, and that is basically the consequence of what is the construct, because there's no measurement, there's no reality of insulin resistance. It's just basically over amplification of signaling and a state where you've got a Randall cycle activation. But just having a signal spike from a certain nutrient is irrelevant, as far as I'm concerned. And that's why it's always associated. These are things are associated, but never causally proven. So when you do the experiment, it doesn't pan out, and people go, well, it doesn't, you know. And it's the same thing with protein. You know, you get a certain level of IGF-1, a certain level of mTOR activation, a certain level of insulin activation, but it's tempered within that insulin to glucagon ratio. You've still got that mechanism controlled by the pancreas, regulating the level of excretion within a certain band of signaling. And so as a consequence of that, you're not going to get these sort of, you only get derangements in these things when you're eating inappropriately. And then you can have an insulin to glucagon ratio of 70. That is 70 to 1. That's the problem. And that SAD diet, that is a fast food diet. That is the construct of insulin resistance. That is Randall cycle really activation, prolonged chronic activation of these inflammatory pathways. That's the problem. So I think we need to basically be avoiding this sort of reductionist thinking that a lot of people do. And then a lot of these studies, people are eating SAD diets with milk, and that's what they're looking at. And I'm going, well, that's Randall cycle. That's overactive. That's the over signaling of insulin compared to glucagon. Eating an animal-based diet is not going to create that signaling. It's going to be a different signaling relationship. And that's the important thing, the take-home message.